Welcome back to MVM. Today we're going to be taking a look at Angel Fury, the next game from the FryxGames brothers. You might recognize this name from the game Terraforming Mars, but do not expect this to be a follow-up that's in a similar vein. This is very different from that game. In fact, this is a tactical miniatures skirmish game that's going to pit you head-to-head in a battle literally for the human soul. The name Angel Fury is on the nose here. You're going to be playing as either the angels or the demons, battling to see who will overcome and ultimately control the soul of a human. This is classic light versus darkness battle exemplified out here in this physical battlefield. Now this is a 1v1 or team-based game with a solo mode, and there are a variety of different factions for both the angel side and the demon side. What I have set up here in front of me today is a 1v1, and you'll see that set up here with a 1v1 battlefield. The battlefield is made up of a number of squares that represent a grid. You are told where to place your starting units based on the map itself, or maybe the scenario that you are choosing to play, because there are a variety of different scenarios you can pick from. You're going to see all of the units out here on the board, and those units come in three varieties. You have your basic footmen, the angels and the demons, your small figures. And then you have your larger figures, the seraph on the angel side and the tormentors on the demon side. And then you have your archangel and archdemon, which are kind of like your generals of your army. And you're going to place these out here on the battlefield along with some terrain that you can interact with during the game. Of course, you're going to see some other things out here as well. You're going to see the player boards for the two factions, and those are made up of two separate boards. You have the actual player board and then the training board. This is a deck building game. You're going to be powering your army by playing cards and building out a deck by training it. Each player is going to start with a 12-card deck that is specific to their faction. So you have a different set of cards for the angels and the demons. In addition, each faction is going to get to choose a leader. This is going to be your archdemon or your archangel, and it comes with a very specific card. This card is going to determine your starting hand size, your starting health value, how many gems that you might start with at the start of the game, or other bonuses that you might start with. In addition, each one of these characters is going to have two special starting cards that are going to replace cards in your deck. So you're going to take out the cards that you would have had in there, and you're going to replace them with these instead, shuffle them up, and then place them on your player board. You're always going to have a 12-card deck in this game. Any cards that you ever gain through training or through other means are always going to replace another card. You're going to do this for both sides. You're going to place out both of those character cards. You're going to set up your starting decks, and then you're going to be ready to start the game. Over here on the training side, you're going to set aside your training deck and reveal 4 cards. Now, training cards come in multiple levels. Over the course of the game, you're going to want to purchase these training cards to level up your deck and become stronger. There are multiple levels of cards. You might see some that are level 1, level 2, etc., etc. When you purchase a card that is a higher level, you have to discard the lower level card from your hand, in addition to paying the cost. If you do not have that card, you can always purchase a card and set it down in your reserve so that when you actually get that card, you can then discard it and replace it with the better card. That is basically the deck building element of this game. You're going to be constantly wanting to look at your training pool. There will always be 4 cards here available to choose from. Some of these cards will actually come up onto your player board to power your tormentor or your seraph and give them special abilities. The other things you're looking at on your player board are your hand size, which determines how many cards you'll draw, the health value of your champion or archdemon, archangel, and then you'll have a number of used or unused power tokens. And you're going to be spending these power tokens to take actions during the game. Also, you're going to see a soul board up at the top. This is where you're going to place the points that you score over the course of the game. This is that battle against light and dark, the push and pull over that human soul in the middle. Each scenario might have a different scoring mechanism, but in the base game, you're just looking for 7 points. The first player to score 7 points is going to win the game. Now, the actual game is split up into 2 phases. The action phase, where you're going to take the actions of your turn, and then the resource phase, which is where you'll generate resources that you've captured or resources that you're generating from other means. Now, unlike a lot of tactical games, there's actually no arbitrary limit to the number of actions or things that you can do on your turn. As long as you can afford the cost of that action, you can continue to take actions over and over and over again. So you can do the same actions multiple times, including moving your troops, fighting different battles, moving troops multiple times. You're going to be limited, of course, though, by the gems that you've collected and by the command tokens that you have in your command pool. And then, of course, by the cards that you have in your hand. So all of these things are going to determine the actions you can take on your turn. But again, like I said, you can do these in any order. One action that you'll be doing a lot is deploying units into the battlefield. Every turn you'll be able to gain reinforcements that can come up in your spawning area. Each player has a specific spawning area, and as long as they continue to control that area, they can continue to spawn units in that area. If the other player takes control of it, then you cannot spawn there. However, the Tormentors and Seraphs serve as spawn points, kind of rallying points, and you can always spawn units in their spaces. Of course, you're always probably going to want to move your units as well. In order to move a group, you'll have to use one of those command points. You can move groups in orthogonal order, so you can move groups anywhere as long as they can orthogonally touch that space. You can capture different objectives, you can grab these resource generating landmarks that are on the board, and of course you can initiate fights with the other team by getting ready to move into their space. Now each one of these spaces is divided into 9 smaller squares. You can fit 9 small bases, but some of the larger bases take up multiple squares, and so when you're moving your units around and reforming your armies, you need to keep this in mind that you can't just pile every single figure you have into one space and then attack. There's a limit to how many soldiers can be in any one space, but you can bring in some of your stronger fighters, and also the cards you have in your hand and the cards that you've upgraded are also going to increase your chances in battle. So coming in at a 9 versus 9 fight, it doesn't necessarily mean you're on even ground. You might have some advantages against your opponent based on some things in your hand that they don't even know about. But when you do want to initiate combat, you can do that by attacking a group of enemies that is adjacent to you. Now, if you do trigger a battle, that battle has to be resolved immediately before any other movement can happen. Each player is going to gather up their dice, and they're going to gather a different number of dice based on the units they're bringing. This is based on the number of squares that those units take up. And they're going to roll those dice, looking for hits, misses, or defense. The attacker is trying to roll more attack symbols than the defender rolls defense. And of course, all of this can be modified by your cards. Both sides are going to be doing damage to each other and eliminating soldiers from each other's armies. If anyone is still remaining from one side or the other, then the battle can continue. The defender gets to choose if they wish to retreat. If they do, they'll pull their units back. But if they don't, they can continue defending, the attacker will continue fighting, and you're going to do that again, rolling the dice, playing cards from your hand, and mitigating those dice rolls if you can, until only one side remains or until the defender retreats. Once the defender retreats, the attacking army will move in and they will take up that space. Of course, that doesn't end your turn. You can continue to attack with that army if you have more command points. You can bring in reinforcements from other areas. And remember, you could do these things in any order. So if you have some extra reinforcements waiting, you can spawn them after combat so you can kind of see where they're needed most on your side of the battlefield. Now, those cards in your deck aren't all battle cards. You'll have battle cards that will help you mitigate those dice, but you'll also have tactical cards that you can play in your turn to enact various maneuvers on the battlefield and kind of catch your enemy by surprise. So you can expect to see a lot of different varieties of strategies played out here on the table. Now, once you're done with all your actions, and again, you're going to take as many actions as you can afford, you'll start with 3 command points. You can purchase more. You start with a hand size of maybe 4 or 5, but you can upgrade that as well. You can play cards to gain more command points to move units. You can buy cards. I mean, there's a lot of varieties of things you can do in your turn. But once you're done, then you'll move on to the resource phase. And this is where you're going to score points during the game. You'll see in the middle of the board the space where the human stands. If you manage to end your turn with units in that human soul area, whether you're the angel side or the demon side, as long as you have at least 1 unit there, you're going to score a soul point. And I talked about that soul tracker up top that tracks the light versus the darkness. You're going to take one of your tokens, you're going to place it on that soul tracker to show that you've scored a point. You're also going to score a point if you've captured the opponent's shrines. If you manage to capture both of your opponent's altars and the soul, you can score 3 points in 1 turn. And remember, I said you only need 7 points to win. So if you manage to do this twice, that's putting you almost all the way to victory. So you have to be very careful not to let your opponent ever completely control the board. There are some other things that you'll want to do, though. You'll want to also capture these resource areas because these are going to help you generate resources now at the end of the turn. Scoring points is great, but resources will help you build up your army and allow you to score more points later. You're either going to draw resources for some of these areas, or you're going to draw reinforcements for controlling others. Plus, your archdemon or archangel is going to give you some kind of resource generation as well. So you're going to look at your cards to see what you'll gain every turn. So you're going to calculate everything that you would gain at the end of your turn and then gain it. Of course, any reinforcements that you would gain are taken from the outside supply and moved into your reserve. They can be placed during the next phase, of course, spawned in at one of those spawn points. Now, once you're done with your turn, if you have not scored 7 points, then the game is going to continue. You're going to go back and forth with each player taking turns, manipulating the battlefield, fighting these fights, doing tactics cards, building up their armies, until ultimately one team has 7 points and then they are determined to be the victor. Now, that's kind of the basic setup for this particular scenario. And I did say that there are other scenarios you can play. There are team-based scenarios that are going to be 2-on-2. You can do a solo mode where you're going to be playing against kind of an AI opponent. And there's a lot of other different modes of gameplay that you can find on their Kickstarter page. So take a look there if you want to see the final components. Of course, as you probably know, I've been using a prototype for everything you see here. The final version of everything that you can possibly get is going to be listed on their Kickstarter page. So take a look at that and come back and let me know in the comments what you think about this game. I'm interested to know your thoughts. It's a bit of an interesting theme, not something that we see a whole lot in board gaming. So thank you so much for watching today as we took a look at Angel Fury. The game is on Kickstarter, so take a look and we'll see you next time.
Now, before you go, there's one more thing I want to talk about. I hate to bring this up, but YouTube analytics tells us to do this. So please click on the subscription button, ring the bell, watch our next video, rinse and repeat. Just keep doing that over and over and over and over.